Okay, so today we're going to be focusing on the missions, or at least the underlying functionality for missions in the game. This is obviously quite a sizable chunk of work, so it's certainly not getting finished today. But um, yeah, my hope is that we can start to filter down what missions should be shown on what stellar objects. You can see here there's a bit of a debug log of of stuff I've already been working on. That it's already finding some missions. However, this currently isn't really doing what is, or isn't really fully filtering this functionality down. So let's go to the mission provider. So the idea of this mission provider object is going to be, it's effectively what's going to be responsible for sifting through all of the missions that are available for the game to be able to make use of, and gradually filter it down to a set of missions that are applicable to the user or to the player in the current system at a given stellar, at a given location, given their current require bits and control bits that are set. So this list here is actually being generated here by this generate raw mission set. What it's going to do is basically just going to go through every single mission and just get rid of anything that is just outright not applicable. So let's say the player's legal status is not right, then it's just going to discard it. If the player's kill rating is not correct, then it's just going to discard it. All these kind of things are going to contribute to this and determine whether it is a candidate. Now, in producing this list, what we need to do is we need to create an instance of the mission. So when we actually load this mission, we're loading it directly out of the resource fork, so it becomes a brand new instance of the mission. So we can mutate this mission as much as we like, and it's not going to affect other instances of the same mission that might occur in the future. I'm thinking primarily of like your ferry passengers, deliver goods to wherever, these kind of missions that are seen over and over again and aren't like a one-off mission. So we need to be able to obviously mutate a given instance. So when we have, let me open up a mission on this, or the actual mission structure on this side. I apologise for the cough. I've had it now for weeks. Don't worry, it's not topical. But anyway, so obviously certain things in the mission structure itself need to be changed. Let's say travel style, return style. These can be set to indicate like a random stellar. It could be any inhabited stellar, it could be any stellar of a particular government, or any stellar of an allied government, so on and so forth. Basically, we need to be able to mutate these to represent what is actually required for a given mission. We also need to be able to set cargo quantities. On some of them, they can vary by plus minus 50%. I'm not too sure if rewards can be randomized. If I pull this over, yeah, thank you to Andrews05 for getting this together in a nice, easy to consume way. The PDF was really annoying. Anyway, let's check. PayPal. This number of credit. Yeah, so obviously we've got various consequences that we need to be able to change what we're going to do with. So the mission isn't necessarily going to be loaded from the resource fork and be good to go. Yeah, so this is effectively what we're working on at the moment. Now, as you can see, I've already been doing a little bit of stuff with the available stellar in order to grab any inhabited stellar in the galaxy. Now, obviously this is not necessarily as easy as it sounds. It's not a complicated problem, but it's going to require a bit of refactoring in the code base, because at the moment in a system, if I bring up these systems, when we preload the system, we don't load up the stellar objects. Now this is going to be needed for the actual map display at some point. This is going to be needed for the map display at some point. Anyway, we need the stellar objects so we can list the planets and stations that are in the system. But currently they are loaded through a different method. Now, this gets called when we enter a system. And the way that this is actually loading the stellar objects is it's bringing in all the sprites, which we don't want. And also, preloaded stellar objects, it's also bringing in things like asteroids and agents and stuff like that. Like, stuff that we don't really want to be loading up or instantiating just to produce a mission. So we effectively need to do something along these lines. So that the system provides us information on the planets and stations that are in there. Now it's going to have to be in the preload system, and I think the main thing is actually going to be bringing this over, bringing this functionality over, but then leaving the load of world assets behind in here. So we'll loop over these stellar objects again in the future and then load all the assets at the time that they're required, rather than when we instantiate the system. Hello to everyone who is now who has joined. I'll try to remember to keep glancing over at the chat and answer any questions that anyone has. I know last time I was a little bit ignore the chat a little bit too much. Anyway, yeah. So let's get started on that. So we'll get a basic representation of all the stellars. That's it. We don't want a full representation here, just because it's. We can just do that there. Yeah, we don't want a full representation of the stellar because we don't want to start loading sprites and everything. It's just not particularly efficient. And will impact memory more than it needs to, particularly given that these systems could get instantiated multiple times. They shouldn't. It just depends on when Lua decides to do its garbage collection, and how Kestrel decides to handle caching of resource data at that particular moment. Right. We'll bring this over. Really need to find a better way of doing that. And actually, that ain't gonna work. Let me do it this way. Actually, the other way would have worked, but oh well. This way still works. So with this, I want to say stellar load overworld assets. Right, now given that I've actually just changed how this is, I'll change this. Let's just make sure that this actually still works. There we go. And that's because I forgot to set up the stellar objects there. Okay, so the game has at least launched, and everything seems to be working fine. If we navigate around, yep. Okay, so we seem to be working absolutely fine, and we can land. Nothing seems broken, except the targeting, but that's been broken for ages, so ignore that. We can select the different stellars. Cool. So it hasn't broken how stellars are working. That's great. Which means hopefully we can start actually going through in the galaxy and finding a random inhabited stellar. Oh, actually, if you look at the log, it's already doing that. So this here, it's recognizing if the mission available stel is set to -1, which if we look here, available stel, -1, any inhabited stellar. So we're already looking for any inhabited stellar, and if you note in here, it's giving us a stellar. Okay, so in this case, it's picked stellar 145. This is the internal index number in Cosmic Frontier, not a resource ID, so don't worry too much about whether thinking that, oh, we've only got 100 and 34 stellars. We don't. We have 152 recognized. So in this case, it's decided that this mission should be available from wait a minute. Let's pick the stellar that isn't in the system. Okay, so first issue. Bear in mind, this function just flat out didn't work before because the system didn't have any stellars in it for it to be able to look at. So there's going to be plenty of bugs here to look at. Let's move this over here. Any inhabited stellar, right? Okay, so we are literally just looking at inhabited stellars for the galaxy. We should probably set up a function here. Probably wants to be a public one. Okay, so why am I setting it in mission? Mission's not where I want to do this. System is where I want to do it. Right. Okay, so we're going to set up a property for getting a list of all inhabited stellars. The idea here that we can go to the current system. We can ask the player for its current system to get. Actually, we don't even need to be in Galaxy for this. We can go to. If we go to Mission Provider, put that there, move that over there. Right. At this point, we can actually just say player. Oops. Current system. Yeah, so we can get a reference to all the inhabited stellars, and then why did I get rid of that just there? Okay, discard that change. Do that. Oh, that's why. Right. So the idea of this here is we'll pick a random stellar out of the list of inhabited stellars for the system the player is currently in, and then we'll give the name of the system. But first, I mean the name of the stellar. First, we need to build a list of them. Yeah, start objects, right. Right. So in theory, this will give back a list of all the stellars that are marked as inhabited, and then inside here, so we receive this through here and store it in local variable, and then given that the mission is available at any inhabited stellar, we are going to select one of the inhabited stellars in the system for it to be available at. So let's try that again, and this time we should only be seeing okay, that crashed because print to index current system. That is because the player doesn't have a current system. Well, the player does have a current system, but it's available through the player's navigation, not through the player itself. Okay, let's give that a shot. Hey, so this time it's put the missions, you can see just here, like it's selected Luna and Earth. We know they're both in the starting system, so we have at least got that bit correct. Head down here because I always do. Right, in this case, it's selected the missions to be available at New Riga. I have no idea how people pronounce that. So we've got New Prussia, Troon, and New Riga. So we've got another one working correctly. Let's head up this way. Don't worry, jump distance hasn't yet been sorted. Cool. So in this case, we've received no stellars available. So this can't possibly ever work or ever be applicable. Now, the naive way would be to just not return any missions if there are no inhabited stellars. However, we can get missions on uninhabited stellars, and I believe yeah, we can't do that, so we can just simply say in this case available stellar is -1 and inhabited stellars, this hash in front of the variable, in front of the array name, if anybody's curious, is number of elements. It's a shorthand in Lua. So if we've got more than, well, if we've got any in there, then we can consider this. Otherwise, it's just not something we can consider. In which case, we can then say, go to mission, search, continue. As we go through the different available cell options, we'll do them as new else if clauses. Effectively, anytime we determine that a mission doesn't meet certain criteria or can't meet criteria, we skip to this mission search continue label. For some unknown reason, Lua lacks a continue statement. It has break, but it doesn't have continue, which means I'm stuck using a go-to, which is awesome. I could also do something with bools or whatever, but I don't care enough. And it makes no real difference. Right then, so let's give this another shot, and we can head back to that same system and see whether we get a crash again. Now, it will still say candidate mission found, or it should still say candidate mission found. However, it shouldn't ever give an available at notice. We still get the actual Riga. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, my assumption would be to pronounce it Riga, but maybe that is literally just my accent. Don't know. Right, so this time we've not had any stellar objects listed, which is a good sign. That would indicate it never actually added it to the set of found missions. So we can actually I should move. Let's move this down to there. That way we know if a candidate mission is listed that it has actually been successful. Right then. So we've got available any inhabited stellar. Now, what's next? At a specific stellar. This is going to be interesting because we actually we need to go through the list of all stellars in a system and check whether this mission or whether that stellar is the one listed on the mission in this case. Should be straightforward enough. Should be a straightforward enough one to do, but in this case it might actually be better. We already have player there, so I can just say player. Might actually be better here to go player player navigation, current system contains stellar. And we need to make sure that we're going to be within that certain range. One thing I will actually comment on here is obviously we're not going, there isn't going to be any limits on the number of resources available to use in the game. Did I get that right? Yeah, 2175. However, what a namespace yeah, it's purely a coincidence. I didn't actually, when I got started with it, I was actually looking for a good editor for working with Lua. There's a number out there that will handle Lua, and it's like typically my editor, my code editor of choice for anything that is outside of the Apple ecosystem is Sublime. However, the Lua packages in Sublime are a bit naff, and I couldn't really be bothered to put the time in to improve them. I'd much rather actually just be working on Cosmic Frontier than working on a language support pack. So I tried in Nova when it got released, and it has some vague sense of syntax awareness, so it will provide like code sense, sort of. But yeah, this is pretty much the only thing I actually use Nova for, is for working on Cosmic Frontier. It's just a nice little bonus that it's called Nova. Anyway, what was that? Yeah, so each namespace in Kestrel will probably still be limited to the same number of resources as Nova was, potentially. This is still something I need to actually work on, although I'll be working on expanding resource pools once I've got Nova compatibility sorted. The biggest issue is I can expand the resource pool relatively straightforwardly in cases where Nova doesn't have built-in calculations for looking up another resource. The backwards compatibility here is really where the tricky part comes in, which is why it'll probably work with expanding out the resources, or expanding out resource pools by working with namespaces. So each namespace might have the original Nova restrictions, but Kestrel can then do what it needs to do, or Cosmic Frontier can do what it needs to do under the hood with managing those resources. So if you've got two stellar objects with a resource ID of 150, if they're in different namespaces, Kestrel will see them as separate things, and thus it will present them as their own unique resources. Whereas if they were both in the same namespace, one would overwrite the other. So that's potentially how it's going to be working. Hasn't really been finalized yet, haven't really fully decided on that. So that's still a kind of watch this space. Sorry. At some point, I do plan to do a stream with regards to modding. It'll probably cover a lot more in that, and a lot more discussion around it with that. Anyway, yeah, so we want to say and that and do this. Right. Which means now in the system, we need to produce a contains stellar. This seems like the kind of one that wants to be public. I imagine it's the kind of thing that people might want to actually do. Contains stellar, yeah. Right, let's give this a try. It's probably going to go back. We will see. What would be good if I actually put any kind of indication that need to put an indication that it's actually doing something. Now it's just finding a mission that actually has a specific seller programmed in. So there hasn't actually been any thought with that, with regards to the Ambrosian logo. The thing is, we're producing an entirely new scenario, well, it's not an entirely new scenario, it's the same scenario, but it's entirely new data files. So they won't actually have the Ambrosia logo in them. So with the default game, there's no issue there. Now, if people choose to drop in one of the original scenarios, one of the original 3 scenarios, then they will see the Ambrosia logo. There's nothing that I can really do about that, because it's going to load up the logo from the resources. I can make it just not display that screen, just drop that screen entirely. That's something that we will still need to decide on, whether that's going to happen or whether that screen is wanted anymore or not, whether we want to put evocation games there or whatever. However, technically, we don't officially support using the old scenario. Obviously, it does run the old scenario because we're going backwards. We're aiming for backwards compatibility, but we don't technically support it. So if it happens to have the logo in there, that's just because someone has decided to do something that's not fully supported. Conversely, it also means that if someone runs into difficulty running one of the original scenarios, we won't support a fix in an official capacity. So there is that. So yeah, basically the logo won't be in the actual game. Currently the logo's there because I'm using the original scenarios for development. So yeah, the logo will actually be like an evocation games. We've got something like that's a bit of a draft at the moment, but we still need to fully decide what that logo, the actual logo that we've got at the moment might change, might not, don't know. Right, I think right now, in order to do this test, all missions are going to be available on Earth. Earth is a busy place now. Interesting. That would be because I can't set that. No, wait a minute. Yeah, let's leave it like that. And more logs. Okay. So we got a bit of something there. Need to make sure that we're actually scanning the correct things. Possible that we're not. Yay. Attempt to concatenate a null value. Brilliant. Which would mean that the stellar object is being loaded incorrectly, so it doesn't have an ID. Not ideal. Oh, wrong one. Okay. So we want resource ID there. Okay. Right, let's just check this. Makes sense. If player navigation current system. No, that's not going to work. Why? Oh. It would help if I actually you know what? Sorry, I'm jumping around the code and leaving many unfinished lines around. Sometimes this happens. My mind wanders onto another bit, and I go back and systematically fix the carnage I'm leaving. Right. So if we get the current system, then we can get the enhanced sellers. Then if we check the current system, can I get the seller objects in here? I can't get them in the public interface, but I'm pretty certain I can get them in the private. Yes, seller objects. Don't know why they're still in the private interface. They should be in the public one. Right, so if the seller objects is that, then we're just going to return an empty mission set. Okay. It makes more sense to move those there. And let's go down again, and then Yeah, I can trim this down. Right. Stellar's Stellar navigation, current system. Oh, did I have? No. Right. Stellar objects. Stellar objects just added as indexes, which means I'm going to want to so instead what I'll do is I'll return out the actual stellar object if it's found, otherwise it'll return nil. It means I need to tweak this ever so slightly. So I'm actually going to move that from there. Just do that. Get rid of that. If not stellar, then go to right. So with that now, it's actually going to go through. If the stellar is not in the system, it's then just going to go to continue effectively. So yeah, that should make that a little bit cleaner. Right, so all these are available at Earth because Earth is in the system you start in. Yay. Let's navigate to another system and see what we get. So this time, yeah, no candidate missions are found because Earth isn't in the system. And if we jump back to Sol, suddenly we get those candidate missions again. Brilliant. Okay, so we've now got specific stellars done. Some of these start to get a bit more complex because we're having to factor in larger webs of resources. So we now need to follow each of the connections, check those systems to see whether they've got a stellar in, or to see whether they've got the stellar that we're interested in, which will be really fun. Not as fun as these guys. They're going to be really fun. Right. Well, let's get to it. That's going to work, mate. So we're going to say available cell is greater than or equal to 5,000, was it? Yeah, 5,000 to 7,047. $7,047. Cool. Right. We need the... I'm not providing a list of connections. that should probably also be a public property. Tell you what, I'll move those over right now. Am I even still using nav? Producer list. Yeah. Oh well, that's future Tom's problem. Okay. Right, so we get our connections. And so one of the things I'll do later is I'll probably go through and clean up this, because there's going to be quite a bit of repeated code between some of these. This one probably not, but later ones are definitely going to have repeated code in there. Right, so we get our connections. The connections are literally just an ID. So we need to instantiate those systems from this. Connections for and then connected system, stellar object. Right, so we pull down the available stel into a resource ID that we can actually use, and then we'll check there, and if actually, we don't even need to do that. We're literally just looking for that, right? So if we find it, we can break out of this whole loop. Let's say it's the first stellar object we find, and this system has, I don't know, let's go with 20 plus connections, each one of those with 10 stellars in them. You don't want to be going through all of them if you don't need to. So in this case, we'll break out and indicate that we found the stellar. So we'll start off with we haven't found it. Say that we have, in the case that we do actually find it. That will then mean the break will bring us out of the for loop, and we'll know that we can make the mission available at at a random inhabited stella in the system, or at any of the, well, technically it's saying stella in system adjacent to specific system, but this is in terms of how the player would perceive it. It's available at a random inhabited stella in the system next to a specific system. So we still need to actually choose a random stella in the current system for this particular mission instance. It could be a different one at a different it could be a different one in a different time. So we will say this available at and then we also want to make sure that if we have not found Stella, then we're going to go to mission search continue. Right. So I've tested this one this time. Obviously, we'll get no missions listed. Would help if I actually set this. So again, we make Earth the subject of this search. 159. Interesting. It's not in. Actually, I can get rid of that function just there. Attempt to index a nil value. This is probably the biggest annoyance with Lua. Is how it services error messages. So we get a line number, but obviously there are many scripts going into this. Now, typically the way Lua is used, you'd probably just have each script running at predetermined times. But what Kestrel does is it loads everything into the same context, into the same state. So it becomes more like building out an application within the Lua virtual machine. Each of these, each script can leave its own impact, let's say, or its own data in the state that can then be referenced by later scripts. So the problem is each one of these scripts, when they're passed into the virtual machine, it keeps track of line numbers with regards to that script, but it doesn't give an indication of what script. The way it does that is by providing this useful 2-character, then ellipses string. Pretty much every single thing has a header at the top of the file. I mean, even if it didn't, 2 characters is barely enough to distinguish between hundreds of script files. So when we get things like this, it's really bloody annoying. Error reporting from Lua is something I keep looking at lots. I've got this stack, which is somewhat a little useful, but not really. We've got a 159. Let's have a look. 22. I'm pretty certain this will be on the loading. Ooh, where am I looking at? Tile card? That's 21, but right. If in doubt, to sublime merge, and let's see, have I edited a line that's on like a 159? I have not. Brilliant. If I run it again, yeah. The joy of hunting down problems without the adequate tooling. Yay. Okay, so this stellar object should work. We've seen it working in here. So it should be fine. One possibility is the connected system. So let's have a look here. Check your connected system. Okay. I don't know why I put the hash there. It's not an ID. Right, so checking connected system Centauri, and it hasn't progressed on from there. Now it should be that when it actually checks this, if it isn't nil, it should evaluate it's true. But I'm going to explicitly check. Unfinished string. Whoops. I removed the wrong character. It's not what I wanted you to do. Okay, let's try that again. Attempt to index nil value. If I get rid of that, bugger. One thing I don't even bother to check is whether the connected system even has any cells in it. Not sure if that would actually be the cause of that one though. should just come back. It's nil. But turn to an external value. I have no idea why it's saying 159 there, given that it seems to be this line. That's the problem. Yeah. Yeah, so it appears to have done them all multiple times because it's doing it once for each stellar in the system. And if I do this, so it's just a case of whittling this down. Yeah, as soon as we try that, we go bang. And as I said, there's nothing that's calling further, so we're just getting a completely bogus line number. However, connected system can't be nil because we're already printing out its name. And if we look here, system stellar object is definitely a method we've got. That's an interesting one. Let's do this. Does it even get called? Okay, so we have called it. So we've called stellar object available stel for the first connected system that we come to. And it's passing in 128 as we'd expect. Now, I'm gonna, if not solve, oh, bloody hell. So earlier when I was going over the whole thing with the system and this preload system and preload stellar objects, we need to preload the system when we load it. Or, better yet, perhaps I should just try and remember a little bit about what I'm actually building. Ugh. There is a galaxy object. Again, I showed it earlier. So yeah, I should have been on this. We can get a system, an existing system. All of these systems have already had a preload called on them, So rather than going and fetching another system, which would be fine, but I might as well just do this. Alright. If I do this, it should issue. Because what we get has already been preloaded. Yep. So it's checking through. You can see at first no missions are provided because Earth isn't in a system that is adjacent to us. It's in the same system that we're in, which is a slightly different thing. So let's head out again, and this time we should actually see some missions appearing, or we would have seen some missions appearing if it wasn't for the fact that found stellar is never set to true, because I was debugging stuff. Yay. Right, let's try that again. And this time, again, nothing found in Sol. That's what we expect. Let's head off to here, and we are now being told that these missions are all available at New Riga or New Prussia, because Sol is in an adjacent system. And if we continue on again, other than the fact that there is no stellars in here, so obviously there'll be no missions to speak of. Right, just clear that console so it's a little bit less busy. And if we head on again, we do have a stellar. It's checking an adjacent system for Sol. Nothing found, so no missions are ever presented. Cool. So we are at least getting that whittled down. Right, get rid of that because that's just annoying. And we now need to continue on to the next one, which I think is something to do with governments. Right. The government has got to belong to a stellar. This is where things get a bit more complicated. Maybe someone could answer this one for me in the chat. Is this considering whether the stellar itself belongs to the government? So here on the SPOB we have an actual gov field, or is it considering the gov of the system, or is it both? So if the system belongs to government A, but the planet is technically independent, would the mission appear on that planet? Conversely, if the planet is government B and the system is government or is technically independent, would the mission appear on that planet? I feel it would be to do with the stellar government, not the system government. Let's actually just check on the stellar object. Yeah, so that's not really giving any clarity on that one. For the time being, I'm going to assume the stellar government. I might need to do some testing or checking in EV Nova for that one. It's an interesting. I mean, I can't think of a scenario where the stellar would have a different government to the system. The only thing I could think of is the system or the stellar is technically independent and the system isn't, or vice versa. But yeah, if anyone knows about that scenario or knows anything about that, then do let me know. But for the time being, we're going to assume that it's down to the stellar's government. Why? Why would it start at 9,999? Just why? That's got to be a typo. That has got to be a typo. Did I have put the documentation over into here? No, I didn't. Okay, well, we'll go with 9,999 for now. I need to double check that. That's got to be a typo. Right. So let's calculate what the available stellar. What the available government should be, and that is going to be mission.avail cell minus 9,999. Again, why? And then add 128 to that. And then now the question is, the seemingly sensible thing to do is to scan through the inhabited stellars of the system and check whether, or to filter out based on which ones have a matching government. However, because the inhabited state is dictated by a flag on the stellar, not the presence of a government, it's possible that a planet could be controlled by a government but be uninhabited. So I need to check through all. I need to check through all systems. I mean all of the stellars in the system. Okay. And for that, we got our current system and stellar objects. Yeah. So if the stellar in this case, we're going to just say okay. So with this, I'm actually just going to say, let's check for the default government and global stellar not found because of Y. Okay. Well, it must be finding something. Oh, getting really tired of retyping out this debug line over and over again. Right, let's see how many of it got through. Checking stellar Earth. Okay, attempt to index nil value. Stellar government should be fine. Oh, government even in there. Whoops, whoops. Now, the problem with this currently is it will always pick the first stellar in the system, which isn't necessarily what we want. So there would need to be a shuffle function created to randomize the order of these. And then we just pick the first one, or the first one that matches. For the moment, though, I'm not going to worry about that because even if we just get into the first one, at least we've got it picking a stellar appropriately. So with this, obviously, it found them all to be Earth because Earth is going to have the government with an ID of 128. As we move out, yeah, we get New Prussia with everything, as expected, because we're still on the same government. So obviously with this, we're like, it's finding the first stellar in each, or in the system, because that happens to be the first, or to be the first one with the government matching. So we just need to keep going until we come across worlds like here. We have a world. It wasn't found. Now, whether that's because it just didn't select any missions, or it's uninhabited, that would do it. And we just continue going. You'll have to forgive my unfamiliarity with the map. I have said before that I will, eventually, I will be doing a playthrough of Override. I played it once such a long time ago, but I can barely remember I can barely remember much about it, which is sort of crazy given that I'm developing the remaster for it. Although that said, I'm just developing the engine. Okay, so we're also on an inhabited planet, and it hasn't found it because it is not owned by Government 128. Okay, keyboard's bouncing out. So I think we can say that this bit is now doing what it should be doing, somewhat. Obviously, we still need to do the randomization of the stellar objects, but we'll do that. We'll do that at a later point. One thing that actually would be an interesting thing to have answered by any potential modders in the chat, for the listing of stellar objects in the current system, is the order of those stellar objects important? Because there's a lot of places I'm going to need to get a randomized list. So for me, my temptation would be to just randomize the order coming out here. But obviously, if people want an actually, like, the actual order to be what is defined in the resource, then I'd do a separate randomized stellar objects or something. I might just do a randomized stellar objects, probably easier. Anyway, next one is specific govs allies stellar. Oh, this starts to get awesome. Right, for this, I'm going to need to start actually looking at. Where's the override files that I've thus far done. Okay, so we do have some allies on governments. The one problem I have with the override, with testing against the override scenario, is obviously override doesn't make use of all the Nova features, so I can't just immediately test everything with override. I have to duck back into Nova occasionally, which, to change things up a bit, I might just do for a bit. For the last half hour or so, I will switch back into Nova for now. If we rerun that, and we're on Nova. Interesting. So immediately Nova's spitting out some issues. Could not find test term P. So it's on the control bits. We obviously don't have, well, there isn't full coverage of all the different operators yet. I mentioned on Discord how it's like an extensible thing now. So we can add in test terms here. Though, could not find test term P. Don't know about you guys, that looks like it's there. What was P doing? Check if the game is registered. Yeah. The problem is if it's not running these, it's gonna start doing some, like, it's not gonna be evaluating missions correctly. So why you mission called to frontier? It should be there. And this is what we call the going off on a tangent phase of the stream. Okay, I'm just checking through this to make sure it's just to see that it's doing everything correctly. Where's my add? String OP. I'll see. I have no idea. Right, I'll figure this one out later. if it can't find the term, it's just going to evaluate the expression to true. So we might get a few more missions appearing than otherwise would do. Probably why all of these are becoming available. Candidate mission, you need to register. Interesting. Anyway, this is why sometimes you need to actually test with Nova, because Nova's doing a few things that Override just doesn't do. Right. So with it, let's head through to some other systems. And in this case, we don't have an inhabited world, so no mission offered. We should be getting, Paragenesis, it's Federation world, and if we go through to Sol, we should be getting Earth. Yep, available Earth. So the government stuff is working with Nova as well, which means the next thing I need to work on is the allies, which I think I'd just gotten started before when I switched over to Nova. Specific goes Stellar, so it doesn't seem like it should be that complicated. We get the stellar government, then we need to check the stellar government for an ally. For that, I think we need to add a method to government, but we don't have a government extension yet, so oops, I guess that's where we're going. Okay, and then I'll just grab that and move that over. Right, so with this, what I'll say, I'll just go the really simplistic route here. Right, so that'll get us that'll get the whether we're an ally or not, and then I'm actually going to need to get it added into here, the public one, so I'll do script manifest. Right, that allows us to access that, which then means inside mission provider, I can effectively just copy this whole thing. I think it was 15,000. Yeah, 15,000 to 15,255. That 9,999. I cannot wrap my head around it. It has seriously broken my brain. Right, so we get the government, and then we're going to say StyleGov is ally of. Right. So it's effectively the same logic, but we're just checking whether the government of that particular whether the stellar government that we're looking for is an ally of the government of that stellar. There's too many stellars and too many governments involved there. Right. Ignore my emails. Where am I going? Here. Specific govs, allies, stellar. That should be fine. It's a little bit confusing, but that should be fine. Right. Let's make that 5. And then we're now on the Nova one. So I want to try and find Does Nova not use specific or like explicit allies? Or is it just using... Oh. Ah. Okay. I'll see. This is why you always check the documentation first. So what this is going to want to do, actually, is... This is a bit more complicated. Right, so we'll get the ally government, and then we need to check the ally classes. But for that, we need to get those classes out as an actual array. Otherwise, that's going to be 16 explicit conditions, and that's absolutely a terrible way of doing that. Ally classes. Actually, I mean, looking at this anyway, I'm not even too sure what the hell I was looking at. Let's just call it a brain fart and move on. Right. So we're going to say I would not normally advocate for nested loops like this, but in this case, we've only got 4 items in each, so it'll be fine. Right, so I'm going to say self dot ally classes my classes self dot ally classes, and then local ally classes dot self ally government dot That's really confusing. Oh well, at least it's only me that needs to read it. Right, so if the two match, then we can return true. Otherwise, if we get to the end and absolutely nothing matched, then we know it wasn't an ally and we can just completely ignore it. Right. That should work a bit better. So, in here, if we look, Federation has ally classes of 0, 1, -12, and 13. Oh god. I need classes as well. Class 2, Class 3, and Class 4. Right, government is ally of so in this case we're actually looking at classes. Yeah. Right. Maybe on there. Maybe. So another we're interested in anything, let's say with a class of 12 or 13. Hey. I'm not... How... I think I'm getting too tired. I'm getting too tired for this at the moment. So if I say, let's go with the Vals, just because I know they're effectively allied with the Federation. 136. Okay, 15,008. Let's try that. It should come up with Earth, if it works. Hello. You've joined on towards the end of the stream, unfortunately. Yay, crash. Where did I put that file? Okay. Allied government. Yep. It's been an interesting stream. So yeah, I mean, there's mostly the stream has been focused on getting the available stellar aspect for missions sorted. So we're working on what missions actually get presented or could get presented to the player. There's been some interesting interesting issues, and me also banging my head against the wall for a little while. I may try and do some I may try and do a couple of streams during the course of the week on evenings. Well, evenings for me, that is. But we'll see. Why are you having an issue? Because I didn't rename that. Okay. Okay, so that's loaded. That came back as a number. probably help if I check in here. Oh no, we do have is ally or Sargov. For now, I'm just going to do that. Gov. Right. I'll get there one day. Okay, so in this case, checking. So if we give a government of Valos, we're also starting in Kenya if it's reporting Port Kane. I cannot figure out why this is doing my head in. Why it can't find the term. It's there and registered. Anyway, so yeah, it's found Port Kane because it's Federation, which is an ally. So that's great. If I was to go and set a different government that should, in theory, not be allied. Try again. So obviously Port Kane is not allied with the Auroran Empire, but the Hypergate is, so it's going to try and give you missions. Yeah, I should filter out Hypergates and wormholes. As funny as it would be to be getting missions as you head through a Hypergate or a wormhole. Could be quite an interesting way of getting them. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. I'm gonna look into potentially doing one during the week. That's really going to depend on how work goes. Switch back over to override. I'll fly around for a few minutes. Yeah, it's really going to depend on how work goes. It would be, rather than it being your delivery point, I'm thinking more a case of you get the mission as you go through, like a wormhole or something. Like, it could be an interesting way of like dealing with like extra dimensional aliens or something. Like an alien that doesn't actually appear in like in the overworld. Like, you only ever interact with them in like a mission or something as you go through a wormhole. I don't know. Go full Star Trek on it or something. It could be an interesting. It could just be an interesting mechanic. Anyway, that's it. I'll have a bit of a fly around. But yeah, I'm going to try and do something during the course of the week, because I want to try and get this mission, like the mission provider, rounded off so that it's actually working. I think I screwed up something in my refactoring earlier. Why does this shuttle have so much fuel? I don't think this shuttle should have so much fuel. Ah, there we go. Right. Okay, so something went bang. Right, I need to fix that fuel thing. It's gonna work me. I do recall in here I changed something. Consume fuel. Yeah. I renamed some stuff. It should be consume fuel for jumps, not consume fuel anymore. Otherwise it's going to take 1 unit. That'll explain that one. Right, so if I head down this way, this time my fuel should actually go down again. Here we go. And I need to sort that ally government stuff out. Right then, I think that's going to be it for today. Got a good amount done. Like I said, this mission filtering stuff is actually relatively involved. A lot of different edge cases. Still, I need to work out whether this 9,999 is a typo or whether that's legit. If it's legit, then I'm just no words. And then what was the other one that I need to try and figure out? Oh yeah, the government like the government situation for is the government literally just the stellar government, or is it the system government, or is it a combination of the two? So yeah, some interesting things that need to be looked into before the next stream. Whether the next stream will pick up in this exact position or not, I don't know. I probably will have done a bit before then, so it's likely to be that we pick up in the mission BBS next time, and actually starting to do some missions. Anyway, I will see you guys later.